The other rule which we just touched on is that you're not allowed to intervene with weather. So specifically not allowed to irrigate, but if your model is New World wine production, we're not allowed to use smudge pots. We're not allowed to use osmosis or to use fans to dry off the grapes. So the weather becomes an incredibly important player in all of this. And in addition to that, it brings out the differences in the subzones of Montalcino. So the whole question of Montalcino subzones is a hot topic. Many people would like to start dividing up the hill in some formal way, but many producers, ourselves included, have vineyards in multiple locations. So in America, for example, the fact of having contingent vineyards is it's a source of great pride. People you can only write estate bottled on the label if that is the case. In Montalcino, I would say most people would consider it a massive strength to have their vineyards scattered around the hill. This is obviously a repercussion of what we were talking about earlier of this business of limiting the amount of land that's authorised for the production of Brunello. Because if you can't plant adjacent land that you own to make Brunello, and you can only find vineyards somewhere quite different, then you would choose to do that. So we own the land up here, and we could plant it with Sangiovese, but I could only ever make Laura's special brew from that, which is clearly much more difficult to market than Brunello. So our other vineyards are in Castelnuovo dell'Abate. This is true for many producers. So if you're ever here during harvest time, the roads are just full of trucks bringing grapes in to cellars. And many of the very famous cru from Montalcino, the vineyards are somewhere quite geographically different to the vineyards. So we have, to the cellar, sorry.
Yeah.
So we have 2 vineyards in Castelnuovo. So the furthest one away is 8 kilometers away. It's 400 meters lower than this. So this vineyard here is northwest facing, and it's high altitude. We're 540 meters above sea level. So this brings with it a whole series of advantages. It's very well ventilated. We're above the fog line. We have wonderful day-night thermal excursion, which is amazing for the aromatics of eventually of the wine. All sorts of great things. But all of those features that I just mentioned flip into negatives in a cool, dismal, rainy year. They're all great when it's hot. In fact, the weather has been changing, and I remember when I first came here, people were full of pity for people with high altitude vineyards. Poor you up there, they'd say. Whereas now, the quality of Montalcino is creeping up the hill because we're having hotter and hotter years, and having the high altitude is becoming an advantage. This is not a vineyard that's in sun the whole day either. But this vineyard has its features. In a cool year, it can be bouquet heavy, which is not the end of the world, but to balance it, we have our low-lying vineyard, which is right below the Alabaster Quarry in Castelnuovo, down by the river. On that tiny stretch of road, we actually have 17 neighbours, which should give you a sense of how it's hot property down there. So that part of Montalcino is very much sought after because in prehistoric times, the sea came in twice and retreated. So there's marine fossils, there's different pH, there's different drainage, there's saline deposit. In addition to that, it's practically at sea level in a basin, south facing, protected by Montagnata. So a completely different microclimate to here. Often, we'll have rain here and none there. We consider these 2 vineyards to be utterly separate, and we make different decisions about how to tend them and when to pick them. There are times in the year where they are as much as 3 or 4 weeks apart in their sort of vegetative growth, which for the same plant, 8 miles away is pretty incredible. So people love to talk about terroir, and the thing with Montalcino is it's visible to those of us who live here on a daily basis. You can see where some trees are flowering and others aren't, or where the wild asparagus grow. There are these little pockets of heat, pockets of protected area, different soils, and so on. So we have one vineyard down there, and in a way I would call that our hot vineyard, our hot salty vineyard. It's in the same line. I'm sure you've read about Brunello the whale. Have you heard about Brunello the whale?
No.
Come. Well,
sorry.
I'm amazed about this. I think
Brunello the whale.
In 2008, a very large estate owned by Americans that shall remain nameless were digging up to make a new vineyard, and they discovered the skeleton of a prehistoric whale in the vineyard. So that's and which is finally about to be restored and displayed. But just to give you the real sense that it was sea, They were huge, great big, pre-mammals.
I've seen the old oyster shops.
Yeah.
Around.
Yeah. No, I mean, we do see these. So we also have another vineyard a little bit higher, southwest, slightly different. But and this is in an area that's known as La Terra Rossa, the red earth, famous for its content of magnesium, manganese, and iron. So it's a more minerally vineyard. It has a bit less of the heat that our low-lying one does. So our wines are always a blend of the three vineyards. And for us, this it's a way of hedging your bets. It's a way of hoping for the best. You'd have to be extraordinarily unlucky to have hail or wild boar invasions or mold or whatever's going around in a given season in three geographically distinct locations. But it also means that we can harness the best of the vintage because we have all these different aspects of Montalcino in our single bottle of Brunello. So this business of multiple locations, some producers talk about it, some don't, but in our case it's a source of I would say the balance that our wines are famous for, and the complexity is because of having these multiple locations. And this business of people owning multiple land is because of the decision to limit the amount of land under vine back in '95.